Good afternoon. It's Thursday, the 21st of January 2016, just after 1 o'clock. Welcome to UK Column News. I'm your host, Brian Gerrish. With me in the studio, Mike Robinson.
Afternoon.
Afternoon, indeed. Well, weather reports, it's pretty grey, cold, unpleasant here in Plymouth. We've got rainy, cold, overcast and misty for the rest of the country. Manchester wins the prize because the single comment on the weather is yuck. We like it that way though, really.
Yeah.
We're British. Well, of course, we the British are the good guys. We don't get involved in starting these overseas wars or funding terrorism, any of that nonsense. The real baddies are the Russians, I believe.
Yes, Litvinenko report is out today. It's amazing how quickly this came out if we compare it, for example, to Chilcot. But this came out amazingly quickly, January 2016. Just to remind ourselves, 2006, November 2006, Litvinenko died having had a cup of tea apparently in a Piccadilly restaurant or coffee shop with two former agents of the Russian FSB, Andrei Lugovoy and Dmitry Kovtun. Now, of course, ever since then, we've been attempting, or at least Britain has been attempting to blame Putin for this. The inquiry held by Sir Robert Owen, Chilcot should maybe have a word with him about how to run inquiries or something. But anyway, he said that it was probable that the Litvinenko killing was because he was working for British intelligence agencies at the time, that he was criticising the FSB and criticising Putin, and that he was associating with other Russian dissidents, is the word that's used, not oligarchs, dissidents. This was, according to Owen, this was undoubtedly a personal. There was undoubtedly a personal dimension to the antagonism between Putin and Litvinenko. I'm satisfied that, in general terms, members of the Putin administration, including the president himself and the FSB, had motives for taking action against Litvinenko, including killing him in late 2006. He said in the report. So. No surprises, really. Theresa May, of course, no surprises in what she said this morning in Parliament. She said the conclusion is that the Russian state was probably involved in Mr. Litvinenko's murder, and it was deeply disturbing. So there you go.
Incredible language, Mike, isn't it? Probably. It's probably involved, so we don't know for certain, but this is deeply disturbing.
But this is where the hypocrisy creeps in, Brian, because she goes on to say, it goes without saying that this was a blatant and unacceptable breach of the fundamental tenets of international law and of civilised behaviour. I was amazed she kept a straight face as she said this, but anyway, she went on to say, but we have to accept that this does not come as a surprise. Well, perhaps. But I think Paddy Ashdown wins the prize for the Hypocrisy Award of the year so far, because he said that no sensible person would compromise the rule of law in our country on one of our own citizens. Well, first of all, of course, the rule of law wasn't suspended by Putin in his country on one of his citizens. If Putin was responsible at all, then he suspended the rule of law in another country. It was an extrajudicial killing in a foreign country. And of course, Britain would never do that, would we? We wouldn't do that, Brian.
Well, I think we do it by drones. It's different. If somebody does it by poisoning tea, that's really very bad and needs to be exposed. Yeah. But if it's done by a drone, it's to be welcomed.
Right. And of course, many argue that there's plenty of extrajudicial killing going on in the NHS in this country on a daily basis. So, you know, the hypocrisy here is pretty unbelievable.
Well, totally believable. It's in our faces, but yeah, very dangerous. Very, very dangerous stuff.
Well, of course, perhaps this gives a clue as to the timing of the report, because Russia is clearly beginning to make a difference in Syria now, and we're seeing, increasingly seeing moves to foment colour revolutions right across the Balkans, the Middle East, and continuing in Russia as well. That process building at a rate of knots. So this is part and parcel of that, I would suggest.
Yeah, but amazing the timing of that report. Just as what does Cameron need? He needs something to throw back at President Putin, because obviously the whole of the policy in Syria for David Cameron and Obama has been turned on its head by the Russians. So we need some dirt to throw back. And as you say, that report pops out in no time at all, whereas Mr. Chilcot, years in producing a report which still hasn't surfaced. So this is British propaganda, but probably it's probably the Russians. Well, have a look at this, because this is one of the most disgusting things that we've seen reported in the press. We want to take it apart because there's so much in this article. The Telegraph here had a front page. This was from yesterday, I believe. Poppy Worthington call for public inquiry into sudden death of 13-month-old shortly after she was sexually assaulted by her father. This all took place in Cumbria. And we're just bringing this bit. We've got the local MP saying that there were catastrophic basic errors in the police investigation, and it's hard to fathom how things went so badly wrong. That's what the MP says. And ministers have been urged to call a public inquiry into the 13-month-old little girl's death because of grotesque police failings which have denied her justice. Now, this is a really interesting article because the spin is put on that it's all police failings, and we just highlight that bit, grotesque police failings. So let's have a look at this case and what really comes up. We're titling it here, Another Child Death Covered Up and Hidden from the Public. This lady seems to have done pretty well. Dr. Alison, a more Home Office pathologist, she warned the police as early as the 18th of December 2016 that she believed that this little girl had died as a result of a penetrative attack by her father. So the pathologist didn't waste time. She informed the police. And what happened? Well, the police failed to do a whole series of basic things. They failed to secure the crime scene. They failed to secure evidence. They didn't take early statements at the outset. Those occurred much later, when of course people will have forgotten things. And there was 9 other key failings, but there were other things. What happens? Well, the policeman in charge, he disappears off on early retirement on a pension. That's pension of 46,000. So normal response from the police when they've done something wrong. You can't deal with the people responsible. They simply get retired off early. Then it gets really interesting because Cumbria coroner Ian Smith takes 7 minutes to declare the death of the little girl unexplained. He doesn't call for any evidence, and the cause of death on the form is left empty. How would you explain that, Mike?
Can't.
Well, you can't explain it, but we know this is happening with coroners' reports around the country. And what it is starting to show, of course, is that people can die, or indeed people can be murdered, and there is no independent control or checks by the coroners, many of whom are now provided with staff who are all ex-police. And we know that in many locations around the country, the coroner's office has suddenly become embedded next to, for example, the chief executive's office in a local hospital, which presumably makes it pretty easy for the bodies to come out of the NHS. But let's follow this one through. Where can we go from here? Well, Alison Saunders, the well-known head of the CPS, told the parents that they would not face any charges. So well done, Alison Saunders. She seems to be helping the case. And it eventually ended up in the hands of a High Court family judge, Mr. Peter Jackson. And he said on the balance of probabilities, the little girl's father, Paul Worthington, had perpetrated a penetrative assault on Poppy shortly before she died. So the judge wasn't mincing his words there. The local MP accused the authorities of all closing ranks. So suddenly we now see, no, this is not just the police. We've got unexplained things with a coroner. We've got accusations being levelled against the authorities as a whole. We've got the CPS. We're going to come on to Melanie Shaw in a minute, but the CPS tells these parents they're not going to face charges. The good old Children's Commissioner said the government must take proper action. So that is a completely wet, powerless statement. And the NSPCC, this wonderful charity that claims it is protecting children, what did it have to say? Oh, they were very concerned. This is where it gets interesting, because Cumbria Council, who face questions over their handling of this case, come along and take the remaining children into care. And I thought it was interesting there, Mike, that Alison Saunders says the parents are not going to face charges. Well, if that's the case, why take the rest of their children away? But here's the nub of it, that all of these details have been withheld from the public for 3 years. My assessment of this case on face value of the report and the little research I've been able to do so far is, I think what was operating here was a full-blown paedophile ring in the authorities that were tasked with the investigation and protecting the public. That's my initial reaction to it.
Yeah, sorry, just to clarify before we move on from this, the date in the middle there should say 18th of December 2013.
No, apologies for that. It should say 2012, actually. 2012. I'm afraid I've been caught out by January 2016.
Yeah.
Well, if that isn't bad enough, where does the British state go now? This was a report we picked up from the Christian Institute, boy 10, visited by police over terrorism spelling mistake. And the story was that this little Muslim boy, in trying to describe that he lived in a terraced house, had said he lived in a terrorist house. Net result, we end up with British anti-terrorism police terrorising him and his family, and the reports say that basically this little boy hasn't recovered. What is this about? This is about a young child making a mistake, and that brings paramilitary police to his house. But something has happened overnight, because now we've got the BBC saying that the Lancashire terraced house row, oh no, this is not just a spelling mistake, there was something else going on. And this one I found particularly interesting, that when we went to look up this story from The Guardian, here it is on the Google listing, I live in a terraced house, police speak to Muslim boy 10 over spelling error. All of a sudden, oh dear, the article's been removed completely. So what is going on here? The minimum we can say is something very nasty, where we've got British anti-terrorist police terrorising young Muslim children. But of course, this is the very warning given to the UK column by a member of the Met Police, who was talking about anti-terrorism police being out of control as far as the Met was concerned, acting without paperwork, acting without authority, and teaming up with British security services to do really as they please. I think the expression, Mike, is common purpose, that is acting outside authority.
Yeah.
And the other part of it, the icing on the cake of this despicable change in the British state, is that money was no option. So the police claiming they haven't got enough money to put constables on the street, but when it comes to counter-terrorism, David Cameron has magicked, presumably created out of nothing, unlimited money to do what? Terrorise small children?
Well, that certainly seems to be on the agenda. BBC reporting here 400 children under 10 referred for de-radicalisation. So this is a result of a Freedom of Information request put in by the NSPCC. Sorry, I do apologise, I'm completely wrong at that. The NPCC, which is the National Police Chiefs Council, 415 children aged 10 and under referred to the de-radicalisation programme in England and Wales over the last 4 years, and that's on top of 1,424 children aged 11 to 15, and of course it's all happening under Prevent and Channel. So Prevent is the government's strategy, they say, to stop people becoming involved in violent extremism or supporting terrorism in all its forms. Does that include paying tax? Okay. Anyway, we move on. Prevent works within the non-criminal space, including early engagement to encourage individuals and communities to challenge violent extremist ideologies and behaviours. And Channel is an early intervention multi-agency approach, so we're into the MAPA thing here. It's an early intervention multi-agency approach designed to safeguard vulnerable people from being drawn into violent extremism or terrorist behaviour. Channel works in a similar way to existing safeguarding partnerships aimed at protecting vulnerable people. So, of course, this we've reported on this before. This is a law brought in last summer where schools, prisons, National Health Service, local authorities and so on have a prevent duty, which is a legal obligation to look out for, spot and report individuals that they think are in danger of radicalisation. And apparently that includes 400 children under the age of 10.
Under the age of 10. And these children are going to be put on courses in order to reframe them into the correct way of thinking. That will be David Cameron's way of thinking, of course. We had our UK column local meeting last night, and in describing some of the horrors going on within the NHS and within UK as a whole, one of those present, member of the audience, said that essentially UK was becoming like a Nazi state. And that was a very interesting comment because, of course, when the UK column was warning of progress to the situation we find ourselves in today, many people pointed a finger at us and said, well, you're extreme. And now we're actually seeing the reality of what we've been warning about all those years. And indeed, members of the public are picking up on it quite strongly. I'll also add that we've had a number of contacts from teaching staff or school assistants saying how disturbed they were at the prevent training and the fact that they were being asked to spy on young children, and they felt very uncomfortable, deeply uncomfortable by the way their local police force, or indeed the Met Police, the conduct of the Met Police or local police when they were coming in to do this prevent training. So if we say the only approved views now in UK are the views of David Cameron, what are his views? Well, sometimes we get sent old material, but it's useful to recap. This was a report from Yahoo on the 3rd of March 2015, and it was simply pointing out that Obama had stated that his bond with Israel was unbreakable. That was the word. And he said, under my administration, billions of dollars have gone to support Israel's security. Military intelligence cooperation is unprecedented. Well, let's remember that statement against David Cameron, who was reported in mainstream press, including The Telegraph. David Cameron pledges unbreakable support, so exactly the same word being used, Mike, unbreakable support for Israel. And when we look at British and American policy in destroying Libya or Syria or what's been happening in Afghanistan or Iraq, of course, whose security does this impinge on but Israel? So are we getting a British Prime Minister who is actually acting for the British? The UK column doesn't think so. This man is doing something else. And at this point, we'll remind people that we took apart these reports showing that Francis Maude and, of course, Oliver Letwin, his cohort, had been linking in British intelligence, GCHQ, with Israeli intelligence organisations and indeed in Israeli universities in order to enhance their ability to spy on anybody or everybody using the internet or digital communications. So once again, we're going to put this on screen and say who in Parliament voted for this deep relationship with Israeli security. Is the country being run for the benefit of those in Britain, or is it being run for the benefit of an overseas power? Well, let's also remember this. This was a Mail report where we pointed out that a former government cybersecurity man now working for KPMG said it was time to dump passwords, the weakest link in cybersecurity. Experts call for use of fingerprints. So here is the man. Notice that he looks like a sort of jihadist. He's in his black hood. He's there very darkly working away to hack into your computer. And what does the government say? Well, the risk is so severe, we're going to have to give our fingerprints to use our computers. Well, against that interesting little background, we've been receiving a few calls over the last few days. And these calls have come from men and women claiming to be Microsoft support workers. And in a call that I took this morning, it was absolutely fascinating because the man who claimed he worked for Microsoft HQ called to warn of computer viruses, but he also claimed his work is about the national security. So we've now got scammers who are phoning members of the public claiming to be working in matters of national security. And of course, what happens at the end of the scam, they want to ask you for money. Could this money be taken for terrorist activity, Mike? But despite all of the surveillance by GCHQ, and of course MI5 is saying, trust us, they are there at the moment to absolutely hammer the cyber threats. These Microsoft scammers have been working over many weeks, but nobody seems to be able to track them down, even though they're prepared to give a number which seems to be a Birmingham telephone number. So who do you think runs these? Are they run by the firms who produce the virus software, Mike, or are these something to do with the British government?
Could be any of these, all of the above, or none.
A few questions to be answered.
Yeah.
Well, we decided to go straight to it, so we sent off an email to Microsoft earlier today. We said, can Microsoft please make a statement as to the company's actions to counter this fraudulent activity with its inherent risks of data loss and obtaining money by deception, and what specific steps are being taken to protect users of Microsoft products? Well, multi-billion-dollar company hasn't quite managed to respond to us yet. So will be very interesting to see what happens. Do Microsoft respond? But whether or not they do, we're left with this question. How is it the scammers are now able to phone you up saying effectively they're part of the government's national security program?
Or maybe they are.
It's complex, isn't it? Yeah. Well, GCHQ, MI5, MI6, Special Branch, Met Police and all the rest of them, of course, totally unable to identify that Jimmy Savile was a prolific paedophile. But by an amazing coincidence, the retired judge, Dame Janet Smith, her report on Savile and the BBC has been leaked. And we really need to have a look at this report because she said some incredible things. She said this: finally, I wish to consider whether it's possible that a predatory child abuser could be lurking undiscovered in the BBC even today. The answer is that I think it's possible. So this woman's been working at a report for 4 years in order to, as we say, deduce the obvious, that since the BBC protected paedophiles, since the BBC has been attacking abuse victims who've come forward to talk about abuse, including Radio 4 with the UK column, but after 4 years, this remarkable woman says she thinks there might still be paedophiles hiding in the BBC. Astonishing, isn't it? And we want to ask this question: why is it that every inquiry into the abuse of children is led by a judge? Do you think there's a reason for that, Mike?
To shut it down. To
shut it down, absolutely. Well, contrast that drivel is the best word I think I can use on UK column with this, and that is that Melanie Shaw, the survivor of horrific child abuse, was in court yesterday. The result of that court case was there's going to be another court case this coming Friday, and that's probably just going to be a directions hearing about a further court hearing in 5 months' time. This is all related to offences that Melanie Shaw committed when she was in a pretty bad state after coming out of Sodexo prison, Peterborough. She'd got the trauma of abuse. She'd been denied her pharmaceutical medication while she was in prison. She was denied medical treatment. She was harassed. She was threatened and traumatised. Then she's suddenly released. And when she starts to do some unexpected things, in comes Alison Saunders. Remember, this is the woman who says that in Cumbria, those parents are not going to be prosecuted. In comes Alison Saunders to keep dragging Melanie Shaw through the courts. What have the police done? Well, of course, in Operation Daybreak, Nottingham police, supposedly investigating 7 or 8 children's homes due to Melanie Shaw's brave testimony of what was happening in Beechwood, have achieved to date nothing. So what's Melanie Shaw's real crime? Her crime is to have been a child abuse victim herself. Doesn't it make you deeply ashamed, Mike, to live in UK under David Cameron's government in 2016? It
seems to me that what they're doing here is terrorising this woman, and that's really their intention. They have there's no other benefit to what they're doing. There's certainly no benefit for her. There's no benefit for the public. The only people that benefit from this are the people that are terrorising her because perhaps they share some of the guilt of what happened in the first place.
I think that's got to be true, Mike. I think we can also say, and Melody supports this herself, that when she was first taken by the police after blowing the whistle on the Beechwood abuse, if the UK column had not alerted people to the fact that she had disappeared off the streets, I'm going to say here and now that we believe that Melanie would be either incarcerated in a psychiatric institute or maybe she wouldn't be alive. This is how serious the cover-up is. And we'll state once again, if you're wondering why is all this child abuse happening, well, it's been happening for many years, and the perverted people undertaking it, of course, are loved by those controlling governments, because if you can control the paedophile networks and the celebrities, the politicians, the members of the establishment who get a kick from abusing children, if you know about them, you can blackmail them into carrying out your policy. So we'll bring up the latest report from the Evening Standard, and that is that David Cameron has been stepping forward not to help Melanie Shaw, but he's been patting his old friend Lord Bramall on the shoulder and saying it's terrible, the accusations levelled against this man, and he needs a bit of comfort. This is the same David Cameron, of course, who Danzuk accused of trying to dismiss all of the evidence coming forward about paedophiles operating in Westminster. And for those of you who've seen reports about activities by Mr. Danzuk recently, all of the information the UK column is receiving says that despite his poor behaviour, what Mr. Danzuk exposed around child abuse in Westminster at the outset remains totally true. What a delightful country.
Right, nothing more to say on that.
No, I think we'll leave it there.
Yeah, okay, so we'll move on to financial stuff. It is quite incredible how financial news is breaking at the moment, and I think we're being softened up for what is about to hit us. Ambrose Evans Pritchard here, he is in Davos at the World Economic Forum conference, and was speaking to William White, who's the chairman of the OECD's review committee. And he's a former chief economist at the Bank for International Settlements. Of course, the Bank for International Settlements is the central bank's bank, if you like. The general thrust of this is that the situation that the financial situation we find ourselves in now is much worse than it was in 2007, 2008. He's saying that, this is William White, is saying that macroeconomic ammunition to fight downturns is essentially all used up. He says that emerging markets were part of the solution after the Lehman crisis. Now they're part of the problem too. Debts have continued to build up over the last 8 years, and they've reached such levels in every part of the world that they've become a potent cause for mischief. It will become obvious in the next recession that many of these debts will never be serviced or repaid, and this will be uncomfortable for a lot of people who think that they own assets that are worth something. The only question is whether they're able to look reality in the eye and face what's coming in an orderly fashion, or whether it will be disorderly. Debt jubilees have been going on for 5,000 years, as far back as the Sumerians, apparently.
Interesting statement.
Yes. Speaking about European banks, he said that they have already admitted to $1 trillion of non-performing loans. They're heavily exposed to emerging markets, and they're almost certainly rolling over further bad debts that have never been disclosed. and he said that the bail-in deposits above €100,000 will have to help the European banking system to be recapitalised on a scale not yet imagined. So it's all pretty gloomy from Davos, and it continues in Bloomberg. Oil's nightmare scenario dominates Davos. And what they say here is that the first mantra of the oil crisis was lower for longer, then it was lower for even longer, and now Davos executives are starting to whisper a lot lower for a lot longer. And they're saying that oil executives and analysts see that there's not going to be a recovery in 2016 at all, and that the problem is, well, one of the problems is that oil producers intend to keep on pumping, but in the meantime, Iran's oil is coming online. So we've got Fatih Birol, Executive Director of the International Energy Agency. He was quoted as saying, it's the third year in a row we have more supply than demand, but let's keep pumping. And others commenting on this as well. Ian Crane would argue that $70 a barrel is the price that is the sort of minimum price for shale oil, for example, to be profitable. And CNBC here reporting that US oil futures have recorded their worst settlement since 2003, since May 2003, and that's down to $26.55. So it's a continuing collapse.
Just before you take that slide off screen, I'm just looking at it with viewers, and isn't it interesting to see that alongside the key and serious headline of oil falls unexpectedly large inventory builds, to the right of that we've got porn's dirtiest secret: what everyone gets paid.
Yeah.
So this is the playing with people's minds. We've got partly a report on the important stuff. And then what is CNBC doing here? This is pumping people's minds full of distracting filth, basically.
Well, so bad news for anybody that's in banking, because Barclays is cutting over 1,000 jobs in the investment bank parts of their organisation worldwide. They're going to close investment banking businesses in Australia, Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, Russia, South Korea, Taiwan, Thailand. And this is something that we're seeing with other banks as well, closing operations in other countries. The job situation in investment banking, pretty horrendous. 130,000 job losses in the last 6 months across 10 different banks. So they're not doing too well. Shame. And Deutsche Bank seems to be in the worst condition of the lot, because they're warning, according to the FT here, that they're going to report a €6.7 billion loss for 2015. Now, of course, there are many reasons for this. Some of them are related to charges as a result of litigation, because they were bad boys in the past. Some of the charges because they are closing branches, as are many other branches. Many other banks closing branches in local branches, and therefore they've got that incurs a cost for them, and so on. So, €1.2 billion alone is going on litigation costs. €900 million in restructuring costs. €800 million because of their decision to close the branches, and so on. But what is really concerning people is the fact that if you take the sort of one-off costs out of this, Deutsche Bank is still making an €800 million loss. So more, bring it on, I say.
And presumably Common Purpose, the political charity, will be feeling the pinch, because of course Deutsche Bank, one of their very big supporters. And let's remember, Chief Executive of Common Purpose, Julia Middleton, boasted in her book Beyond Authority that we really should pay example to wonderful leaders such as those East German bankers. So the organisation, which has been heavily training school children, young teenagers, and of course people in the public sector, Francis Maud in the Cabinet Office pushing Common Purpose training for civil servants, and we now know it's moved through to MPs themselves, dirty stuff. Deutsche Bank providing a lot of that early money. And I think you're going to take us into a bit more of the reframing of our politicians.
Well, this is a fascinating little article from Peter John, who's Professor of Political Science and Public Policy at University College London. How to get politicians to think experimentally. And he says experiments are becoming very common these days as public agencies turn to randomised controlled trials to evaluate public policies. So in that first sentence, what is he describing? He's describing that groups of people are being used as lab rats to test policy. He goes on to say the Behavioural Insights team, which was in the Cabinet Office, has blazed a trail by using trials to test for a range of innovations. And of course he talks about all the great innovations that the Behavioural Insights team has done, getting people to pay income tax. Is that tantamount to getting people to support terrorism?
I'd say so.
Yeah. Possibly, yes. And he goes on, despite this growing interest, one group of people that doesn't use experiments very much, the politicians, at least those in the UK. And he goes on to talk about an example. An example is a project that took place during the 2014 European election campaign in the constituency of North East Somerset. This research tested whether, as a result of getting a leaflet or a door knock, supporters of the incumbent MP were more likely to turn out to vote than opponents. And we found that Conservative supporters were 4% more likely to turn out to vote, where supporters from rival parties were over 6% less likely. It should be pointed out, it's okay though, because it should be pointed out that as researchers, we are non-partisan and work with all parties. So that's okay. So what they seem to be doing is they are looking for mechanisms which encourage one sort of section of the electorate to come out to vote over another section of the electorate. Does this not, in fact, develop mechanisms for fixing elections?
Well, it is fixing elections, Mike. This is what it's all about. And of course, we know from reports across the country and seeing very suspicious ballot boxes being emptied ourselves that the vote rigging is alive and well. Let's remember the reports from Birmingham, where the report of the Electoral Commission was that it was a banana republic where the rule book for elections had been thrown out of the window. Who was running that? Lynn Homer, the very lady who's now been promoted to Dame for her work in running a banana republic, destroying the border agency, causing mayhem in the Department of Transport, unsettling people in the Treasury.
HMRC.
And HMRC, yeah. So,
so what we're doing is we're taking vote rigging to the behavioural psychology level.
And of course, we've got an article up on the UK Column website talking about the use of NLP within the government, and we've pointed out that there are people now training Conservative MPs and Labour MPs. The figure off the top of my head was some 82 MPs of both Conservative and Labour were being subjected to coaching, mentoring, effectively NLP, so that they could win over audiences. So you've got people that are, of course, hiding the corruption of the banks. You've got people that are covering up or ignoring the abuse of children, but they're going to be taught how to put themselves across in a way that we just believe them. This is dangerous, very dangerous stuff. Perhaps I can add that last night we were shown copies of a very interesting sort of 4-page newspaper which is saying we must stay in the European Union. All of the arguments against the European Union are complete nonsense. We must stay in. And where had this paper come from? Apparently it was Willie Straw. Now we'll take a little deeper look into William Straw. We think this is Jack Straw's son. And let's remember Jack Straw was the man who wanted to make it more difficult for children in care to speak out to the press or media if they were being abused. Wonder whether they'll be using a little bit of those techniques in that written word, in that pro-EU pamphlet. I think the answer to that is almost certainly yes. Yeah. So that's it for today's news. We'll be back at 1 o'clock tomorrow. We'll be joined by David Scott with Northern Exposure. And I have no doubt that David will be giving us more of the of the very serious things occurring in Scotland, where, of course, due to amalgamation of a single police force working with a single political government, party government, and the judiciary, no separation of powers. Therefore, Scotland is already a police state, where that state says, you are not fit to bring up your children. We, the state, are going to run the named parent scheme to do it for you. So serious stuff as always. We'll be back same time tomorrow. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.